Is Kundalini yoga dangerous? This is the number one question that people have asked me ever since I began teaching yoga decades ago. So in this video, we're going to talk about why there is this idea, when this yoga could be dangerous, but why for the most part it isn't, and how to practice this amazing tradition in safe, healing, and empowering ways. The first concern is people wondering whether or not they will have a Kundalini awakening if they do this yoga. And the answer is no. But first, let's talk about what Kundalini is and what these, quote, Kundalini awakenings are that people are worried about. In the yogic tradition, there is an energy, a life force called Kundalini that lies at the base of the spine. In most people, it lies dormant because our bodies, our minds can't handle this supercharged energy. You can imagine this as being our potential spiritual life force. That if I lived in perfect alignment, mind, body, and soul, this incredible, energetic, spiritual force would flow through my whole body, my thoughts, my emotions, and I would live as the superhuman that could be possible. However, we live in a very difficult world, and very often, beginning very soon in our life, we experience trauma, cruelty, pain, contraction, limiting ideas, limited opportunities, and all of these things act like blockades inside of us. It's like imagining a river system and the energy is flowing effortlessly everywhere, no problem. And then all of a sudden something happens and a dam begins to form across the river. And that dam gets thicker and thicker and thicker until that energy no longer flows there. And maybe this happens on many of the tributaries. And over time, the riverbed on the other side, in a way, atrophies. It grows over, it softens. Other things happen there, and it could no longer handle the power of the river that once ran through it. This is essentially our human condition. The Kundalini is that powerful river. But because we've experienced such difficulties in life, we now have fears in our mind. We don't believe in our potential. And it's very possible that given all this extra energy, it might actually go into our mind and animate our fears to the point that life becomes intolerable. And so this extra supercharged energy stays coiled at the base of our spine for our own protection, for our own survival. But of course, what does it feel like in our bodies when we have all of these beaver dams across all of our energy channels? It feels like sadness, depression, anxiety, powerlessness, lack of choice, and struggle. And so once we begin on a spiritual path and we hear about things like Kundalini and we hear about amazing, powerful techniques from the East, and we think, what if those can help me? What if those can help me feel better? Because nothing around me is touching this. It's a fair desire. And then people would appear as teachers and they would offer amazing promises of Kundalini awakening, healing, transformation. Come on this retreat. Come have this immersive experience. And of course, they needed to make sure you had a, quote, powerful experience. And so you would do extreme things, intense exercises, all in this bubble where you were away from many of the things that needed all of these blockages to keep you safe. And of course, the teachers are charismatic and they build you up, and then there's the whole group and everything, and you get so high on it. You have these explosive experiences. But of course, your system can't handle this in the real world. You return to your world and you don't understand anyone, and you can't fathom going to work. But the truth is, you've just been emotionally dysregulated. Your actual body, your psyche, is connected to the world you've lived in. It can't handle whatever it is that was unleashed in these retreats. So then there's incredible discomfort. And sometimes it looks like mental breakdown to the point that people are like, I just need to go to someplace that can help me. And they assume that this is a Kundalini awakening because it all started when they went away on these retreats. But the reality is, Kundalini is natural. This is part of our design. As we heal, as we learn new things, as we unearth the traumas that maybe are creating patterns in our lives today, the Kundalini will just naturally flow. It's like envisioning that beaver dam across the river and standing and looking at the beaver dam and saying, you know what? I don't need this stick any longer. And I don't need that one. And I don't need this one. And all of a sudden, a little bit of water starts to flow. And then all of a sudden, the moss on that side flows away. And bit by bit, the dam is released and the energy flows. And then this flow nourishes you, empowers you, expands your consciousness, and life becomes happier. This is a true Kundalini awakening. So this brings us to the second point, where Kundalini Yoga could be dangerous. And this is when we force ourselves to do things that are actually beyond where we are right now. This could be said for training for a marathon. This could be joining CrossFit. This could be doing anything where you so desperately want to achieve something that you go too fast, too hard, too soon. Can this happen in yoga? Absolutely. It can happen in Hatha yoga. It can happen in Kundalini yoga. It can happen in anything where our brains are driving the boat. This is a problem. Yoga is the journey of bringing all of it together. The body, the mind, the spirit, the breath, everything has to be together. And if someone is extremely driven by the mind, it's easy to make ourselves do things beyond our actual current ability. But one of the things I love about Kundalini Yoga is that you can truly modify it for exactly where you are right now. I've taught classes where there are people who are very fit, flexible, young, old, children, people in wheelchairs, people post-surgery, pregnant, all the beautiful stages of life. And everybody there is doing the same set of exercises, the same Kriya, we call it in Kundalini Yoga. How are they all doing the same Kriya? Because they are taking those exercises, modifying them for their body, their psyche, their state of being, and everyone collectively is having a wonderful, challenging, resting, gentle, whatever kind of experience they're having, but they're having it together within the same class. This is one of the greatest things about this yoga, is that it is designed to be modified according to your truth. It's very different than a lot of the hatha yogas, where very often we are taught that the goal is to achieve a posture and to make your posture look like something out of a book or like the teacher or like the person beside you. So you sort of fit yourself into something that maybe isn't safe. But in Kundalini Yoga, maybe you're sitting on the floor or you're standing or you're lying down and you're doing an exercise, but you are modifying it exactly for where you are. Maybe you change the arms a little, or you go faster or slower, or you breathe differently depending on what's going on. But of course, this modification is easier said than done. Not the modifications. That's easy. A good teacher will give you all the modifications you need depending on injury, age, abilities, and all that. The greatest modification is listening to our bodies and not pushing beyond where we are, releasing the mind and actually connecting with where we are right now. This is no small challenge, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. The second reason that we often go beyond our personal abilities is you may find a Saturnian teacher. So Saturnian, like the planet Saturn. Yogi Bhajan, who brought this yoga to the West, he was considered a Saturnian teacher. And what that means is he would push you hard. And the philosophy behind this is that many of us are only limited by our own thoughts, by the ideas that we just can't do something, when the reality is we absolutely can. So if he pushes you and pushes you and pushes you and pushes you, you'll find out that you're bigger than you thought. You'll find out that you're stronger than you thought, that you're more capable than you thought. This is a beautiful philosophy. And there are times for us all to have a little bit more Saturnian teacher inside of us when we need to pick ourselves up off the pavement and believe in ourselves. This is true. And we also have to understand that when Yogi Bhajan started teaching in the late 60s in the United States, he was predominantly teaching hippies who were going against the man, who would rather just smoke pot and relax and take it easy. They didn't want to be like regular society. And so they had fallen into a certain level of mediocrity. This is the context for a lot of the teachings that still live on long past his passing. And so many of the people who learned from him and the few generations after them also became Saturnian teachers. And if you were in their class, they were like, come on, you can do it. Keep those arms up. Keep going. And they really push. And there's this pressure inside from the outside, not just trying to keep up with the class, but trying to make the teacher think you're okay. And in these classes, it's hard to listen to your own truth. So it is possible, if you find a Saturnian teacher, you may get pushed beyond where you should. Of course, a wise teacher may choose this as well, but it'll be on an individual basis and not simply just, oh, you need this, but you need this in this moment. But tomorrow, you'll do much better with a hug and not have someone yelling at you. On a personal note, when I first did my yoga teacher training with KRI, the official training institute of Yogi Bhajan, I remember traveling to this place to have this training, and I was so excited to be learning from these people who literally sat with Yogi Bhajan. But I was very quickly discouraged by this Saturnian outlook. I was a young mother. My husband and I had a dairy farm. We worked really hard. I had suffered a lot of trauma and pain already in my short life at that point. The last thing I needed was someone yelling at me to do better. Truthfully, I was barely holding things together myself. And it was discovering Kundalini yoga through DVDs that I bought on Amazon that I started to feel this incredible inner power that I hadn't felt maybe in my whole life. So it was very strange to me to go away and have these people just almost berating you and shaming you if you didn't keep your legs up or keep your arms up or go faster or do whatever. And I just sat there thinking, I'm feeling worse and worse about myself. This doesn't make any sense. And to top it all off, I felt so called to this yoga. I knew that I was meant to teach it, but I also knew that when I returned to the town that I would be teaching in, the people who would come to my class also didn't need to be yelled at. These were hard-working people. Many were parents of children, or they were caring for their own parents. And everybody had been through something difficult, which is why they were being called to the yoga to begin with. So personally, I never really caught on to this Saturnian teaching method, which is maybe why I've never experienced anyone having any kind of mental breakdown or struggle. And classes have always been gentle and nourishing and empowering. The other curious thing is one of the primary mantras of this yoga is Sat Nam. Sat is truth, spiritual truth. And Nam means my name, or that I bow to that, or that's who I am. So, however you interpret that, that I bow to my inner truth, that I follow my inner teacher, or that simply my truth is who I am. To go against this truth is to go against who I am. Why would I live like that? This was the best medicine for me at this time because I was an eternal people pleaser and everyone else's ideas and thoughts were more important than mine. So the idea of doing a kriya where I inhale and think sat and exhale and think nam, and I do that 100 or 1,000 times in a class, this was important medicine for me. So it's a curious thing, this tendency to go beyond where we are and to not listen to our sat nam. So if you feel called to try Kundalini Yoga, how do you do it safely? Well, the first step is listening to your body. How do we do that? We shut off our mind. Our mind is the greatest distractor from our bodies. Very often we can live up here and we sort of drag our bodies along for the ride and make it fit whatever our brain has decided we need to be and do. But again, shutting off the mind is no small thing, which is one of the reasons I love this yoga because I have a very active mind and just sitting in a posture, my mind will still go. But if I'm moving and I'm breathing and I'm chanting and I'm doing all these things, my mind actually clears, which is kind of a miracle. And the key to turning off the mind is treating the yoga as a meditation. So no matter what you're doing, you're breathing deeply, you're focusing on the breath, you're focusing on your body. If a thought comes through, you let it just float by. You come back to the body, you come back to the breath. If the thoughts persist, if they just keep coming, then do the exercises faster. If the mind is getting so much energy, put that energy into the exercises instead. And eventually do the kriya, do the exercises with such focus and intensity that you actually can't think. This is an amazing experience, especially if you have a super active mind. The second thing is to release attachment to the outcome. Sometimes we want to heal now. I want to feel the benefits now. And this can often cause us to do too much too soon, and we don't get the results that we desire. The reality is our body, mind, spirit, emotional bodies are amazingly complex and interconnected systems. If you were to imagine everything in your body and mind like a dial, and all these dials, hundreds, thousands of dials, are all interconnected. And then you go and you do a Kundalini Yoga Kriya, a class. Bit by bit, all these inner dials are turning. Then this one over here turns and this one over here turns. Similar to the example of pulling the stick out of the beaver dam. But all these little dials are turning, just gently turning inside. And then you finish the Kriya, you have a nice rest, you let the dust settle. And when you come back the next time to do the yoga, you're slightly different. And then slightly different dials turn, and this dial turns, and this dial turns. And then over time, you change and heal so gradually. Sometimes people have quite amazing experiences where suddenly they start sleeping through the night, or they have more energy, or they feel like they can speak their truth. Lots of wonderful things do happen, but the biggest change is long-term as we heal from the inside out. So it's lovely to really be patient with ourselves as we just gently do the yoga each week or each day, however you practice, and allow our bodies and minds to shift according to its inner wisdom, not something we've sort of made up in our head. And the last thing is to find a good teacher, someone who really promotes safety and gives lots of modifications and makes you feel really comfortable to shift and change things according to where you're at. You want to find someone who creates a safe atmosphere. Kundalini yoga teachers are different than hatha teachers because hatha teachers have to adjust your posture to make sure you're in alignment. Kundalini yoga is different because we sit at the front of the room and we guide you verbally, sometimes through example, but mostly we just hold space for you to have whatever experience you need to have. I've had people cry in class. I've had people burst into laughter, and other people just needed to rest. And this was the sanctuary for them to do it in. It's all good. So in the end, is Kundalini yoga dangerous? Well, if you're seeking instant enlightenment and you go hard and fast, doing the most intense kriyas in an unhealthy way, perhaps. But many people who find me and want to take my trainings or my classes, they've simply been doing this yoga on YouTube in their living room and loving it with no ill effects. And then eventually they reach out and they would like to join a community or do it with a teacher. So in my opinion, no, I don't think it's dangerous. And I've certainly never experienced anything in my practice, in my teaching. I believe this to be a very powerful practice that can help us to stand straight, clear our minds, and truly heal from the inside out. And if you would love to try this yoga, I have a free Introduction to Kundalini Yoga series that has 10 videos introducing you to all the interesting parts of the yoga, and then 3 class recordings that you can practice in the comfort of your living room. And this may be all the yoga you ever need, plus some fun on YouTube, but it's a wonderful place to get started. I hope you have a wonderful day.